So, thank you, President Lee. I asked around earlier, there was no particular pieces of gossip. The only thing I would express is sympathies to the greeters who had to ask everybody their age. Hopefully everybody was honest on that one. And I would just say, given that there are quite a lot of guests here today, just a reminder, you don't actually need to contribute unless you're really keen. So today's session, I've worked in the charitable not-for-profit sector since the 1970s, and various national and CEO roles, and a spell in New York. Is Roger Miller here, by the way? Doesn't seem to be. I was going to disqualify him and fine his table because he's chair of the Charities Registration Board. But yeah, so part of my history in the charitable sector was in New York, which was a wonderful experience. Anyone here, I'm sure there's lots of people here been to New York? Some hands up? Yeah, oh, well, you can pay. It must have cost you a lot just living there, staying there for a while, so you can afford it. And then those who haven't been to New York, you've really missed out, so you should pay as well. So coming on to the charity sector in New Zealand, how many registered charities are there? Was that James? This is as of last week. Yes, there are 26,000, and if you thought it was less, only 16,000, you've underestimated New Zealanders' ability to set up committees, so yeah, you should pay. How many registered charities are there with the word Rotary in their name?
405.
We have a guess of 405. Are there guesses? 105. It's actually 305. If you guessed 405, you should definitely pay. We are better coordinated than that. So how many registered incorporated societies are there in New Zealand? Has anyone come up with a guess on that? There's actually 23,000. If you guessed more than that, you should pay. Again, we're not that uncoordinated in the sector. Question 4. There's 10 questions, by the way. We're racing through here. Can an organisation be an incorporated society and a registered charity?
Yes.
Oh, that's very good. Any lawyers in the room can pay for being part of a system that has organisations reporting to 2 government departments. Statistics New Zealand did a survey in 2005, and they're doing another one. How many not-for-profit organisations did they estimate there are in New Zealand? This is in 2005.
This is the ones not making a profit.
Now, these are the ones intentionally not making a profit. There's lots more organisations who intend to make a profit but don't. Yep, very good. That sounded like James again, was it? James, you should be disqualified too, or your table should pay. James working for the Fundraising Institute. Moving on. Of that total, what was the largest group? Incorporated societies, charitable trusts, unincorporated societies, or 4 is obviously the BITSers, the other sector. Some guesses on that? It's actually incorporated societies, 22%, and yeah, New Zealand is a nation with a lot of people who are into sports. So, of course, when you look at the figures, I've lost my place here. Sorry. Come back a bit. That's number 3. Yeah. Sorry, there we go. The activity groups, defined by Statistics New Zealand, what's the largest group? 3, yep, that's right. Anyone who guessed anything else should pay. Recreation and sport, of course, this is a very sporting-oriented country. And what Statistics New Zealand calls non-profit institutions, how many are completely dependent on volunteers, so have no paid staff at all? Is it 15, 40, 65, 90%? It's actually 90%. I was going to ask anyone who's not involved in volunteering to pay, but of course you're all Rotarians, so you do actually... sorry, I'll just get rid of that. And of the 10% of organisations that have paid staff, how many does that translate to? Is it 5,000, 35,000, 75,000, 105,000? It's actually, 105,000. Bearing in mind there's a lot of part-timers and wages are lower than the government or the private sector. So I guess the people working in this sector can't afford to pay, so it'll have to be people working in government and the private sector. And finally, in those 2005 statistics, how many volunteers were involved? It's actually 436,000. If you guessed less, that's 1, 2 or 3. You again forgot that we're a nation of volunteers. As the Christchurch earthquake demonstrated, it's those community voluntary organisations what the strength of a community and give resilience in an emergency. I've just got one final slide. There was some recent publicity about the charity services and the registration process, saying there are too many, it's quite difficult for small charities to register with Department of Internal Affairs charity services. You'll see on the left there, the smallest tier is actually the great majority of charities. That's all the charities under 125,000. Over on the right here, there are just 60 charities in Tier 1, and that's over 30 million annual operating expenditure. There's community trusts in there, gaming trusts, sanitarium and Ngāi Tahu. And you'll see from that, of course, why we believe the Charities Act needs review. Did you know the shot over jet owned by Ngāi Tahu doesn't pay any tax? So that's the charitable sector in a nutshell, and thank you very much.